Hello and welcome everyone. Welcome to a Digital World Town Hall meeting on October 29th, 2024. We are just 1 week away from the United States of America election. We have a group of folks here that are with us for a live audience that will get to questions as we go through a simple update regarding the last week's worth of progress. So we're grateful for you taking the time and for those that are actually tuning in. First part of this, we will actually focus on some of the advancements this last week and results, and then any question and answer that anyone has for us. We're grateful for Terrence, Elle, and Wally for those that help with the support and administration of these events. Some of the things we may be talking about might be forward-looking, as this is a private membership association. For those that are concerned or don't understand what's going on in society, behind the scenes, there are secret combinations that are basically centrally taking over the world. And they're not just using technology and media and health and other ecosystems that are for-profit businesses that then tie into other ecosystems, but they are actually taking over countries and governments.
Michael, you're supposed to be sharing your screen.
I am sharing it with the rest of the world, but I'll go ahead and share it with you guys real fast too.
I mean, it's not a big deal for us.
No. You guys all, we'll get it shared real fast. Thanks for the heads up. I really appreciate it. There we go. And I think there may have been other folks. So we're good there. Okay, so back to it. So we're basically talking about secret combinations that are private. In most cases, they're private. In some cases, they're actually coming out and being very forthright about some of the things that they're about. And then they use project finance to basically further their agenda and get monetary value from the countries that they've taken over with the reserve banks. And then it ties into what the International Monetary Fund and the World Reserve Bank, along with the World Bank, so to speak. So in other words, project finance is actually where they can get funds to be able to continue these types of endeavors, because a lot of people do things for money. When we look at it, you can see things around wars or pandemics, or even what we'll see with the climate agenda and carbon topics that will tie to it. This last week, we saw at least an admit of certain organizations that lost, between the IMF and the World Bank, about $41 billion with funds that were supposedly around climate change. But really what it ties to is taking technology and controlling who can actually do what, when, where, and how. And we'll go through a little bit about that in just a second. As a matter of fact, I'll drop into, oops, I don't want to go there. I'm going to drop into a real quick post. It was actually here because this will explain pieces of it. So we'll go ahead and watch this real fast.
MasterCard and the United Nations are joining forces to monitor the carbon effect of your credit card purchases. And then you'll hit your carbon max and it'll stop working. Hey, of course, it's voluntary for now. The new credit card is called Doconomy. And on the back of the card, it's going to say, I am taking responsibility for every transaction I make to help protect the planet. This is a social credit score, and it's a proof of concept. The Doconomy CO2 credit card website claims it is the largest initiative ever taken by a bank in educating its users on the impact of consumption. They say themselves they want to set a global standard for carbon calculations. That's the key. Once they have their numbers in place, then they can give every single purchase you make a score and punish you directly. This is what China does. And of course, this will only be enforced on you and me and any businesses that don't go along with their scheme. And banks are going to enforce it. Well, don't say you weren't warned. MasterCard and the United Nations are joining forces to monitor the carbon effect of your credit card purchases. And then you'll hit your...
For those that think that this might be fictitious or not real, I would urge you to just go and look at any of the payment processors that are currently out there in the world, and how they're actually funneling funds in through the payment processors through the different payment systems, namely Stripe. So they've got a massive endeavor around carbon credits and supposedly even transactions that get paid with it, and tying that into the stability and underwriting process. If you haven't used like Shopify or Stripe, or if you don't understand how these companies are funded, they're funded from organizations or indirectly indirectly or directly with organizations that are tied to folks that all lead back to things like big tech and Google. So this chart on the left is not, this is something we've been talking about for over a decade, this particular chart, both of these charts, and really saying how decentralization is actually the solution. This last week, Stripe also purchased a massive organization that will help tie the digital side of things from a cryptographic key, but not necessarily decentralized keys, into Stripe. So that's another massive element. Elle can actually guide us on that particular topic if needed. But in effect, what we're talking about is carbon credits that are centrally actually controlled, whether it's on the buy side or the sell side. And what I mean by that is it goes back to what we were saying a long time ago. At least a gentleman named Raghu with Raganomics that talked about how shopping is actually the key. And all of us can not only vote at the polls, which this gentleman actually went to run for president 3 or 4 different times. But what he did was he showed it how simple it is we basically create local product, we buy locally, and then we use local currency. And if you do that, you literally decentralize your economy and your systems. But what's happening is instead of decentralizing it and driving that, they're centralizing the buyers and the sellers. If the sellers have a product and they don't actually use this carbon credit side of it, then they will literally not be able to be in the system. So in effect, if you use the same approach, but with a decentralized environment, which is what actually the Pacific Union can actually enable. So instead of GDRP, focus on DDR with different organizations that are joining, whether they're kingdoms, countries, nations that are joining this Pacific Union to basically have decentralization you don't have to force everyone into it, but give people the choice to use decentralized payment systems to be able to have vendors in different industries that actually use identity verification processes and procedures, payments, rewards, and potentially dispute agreements. So in this new system, you can actually claw back payments and have them automatically credited. And you can see, if someone's abusing the system, but without seeing who they are. And that's the difference, is these centralized systems don't do that. So very important what the Pacific Union's doing, as well as organizations that will be associated to that. And our goal is to build frameworks for countries to be able to plug into this, kind of like those that are already starting in the Pacific. So with that being said, we talk a little bit about the importance of decentralization and the role of really governance systems to find that fine line between freedom and government, where individuals can govern themselves. And the way to do this, if this is the first time that folks have actually seen this, you basically do it through a process of tying 12 words or 24 words that are randomly selected and given to an individual when they boot up an application, and then they tie it to them as individuals, so to something they actually have. So their self, is the unique identifier that unlocks it, not a username and password. And then there's derived keys that actually tie to that. Very important, huge model. So we talked a little bit about what happened in 2008 and when Bitcoin was actually released, and how there was about $100 billion worth of unrealized losses, primarily just in the United States of America, tied to residential and commercial properties. We're currently, as of Q3, the end of Q3, which is the end of this last month, in 2004, there's over $750 billion. So we're talking, 7 times that. Some would argue that inflation has almost doubled since then. I would say it's less than that, but the net is financially, the world is in a very different disarray that we've never seen. And so what we're going to talk a little bit about this week is the advancements that we've been able to make on how systems can actually procure precious metals to be able to move out of the existing system that is depreciating into a system that will actually appreciate. So I'm going to jump into some of those systems today and show you some of the advancements that we've been able to accomplish. I'm going to get rid of this real fast. So what we're looking at is a new environment all about credit. And so when you actually get a physical asset such as gold or silver, you can actually, and I think this is actually, I'm going to refresh this real fast. Yeah, there we go. So when you actually purchase this gold or silver, you can actually get a digital receipt in a form of a type of digital currency. And so when we start understanding how these digital currencies can actually fulfill, remember the way to decentralize an economy and really choices, build a local product, sell a local product, or buy one within a local region with a local currency. And so imagine if these currencies can actually be digitally exchanged, but not using the existing foreign exchange systems because they're not fiat-based money. So you're coming out of fiat money, buying silver or gold that you actually own, you take ownership of. So the gold is actually serialized to a cryptographic receipt key that you actually can control. So if you ever say, I want to cash this in, you can literally just convert it in and then it gets shipped to you. So the gold or silver is actually vaulted, audited, insured, and then if you want it shipped, you can. So those are types of things that are currently under works, and we're talking about coins, bars, as well as foils. And for those that haven't seen foils, I've shown it before, but I'll give you another example. So you got normal dollars, and then this is basically, it feels the same, but it's actually something that people can put in their wallet. I've personally seen them used to buy different things, namely out of Texas with vitamins or herbs or even technology or even, donations. And it's an interesting thing. But so these services are basically looking to go live, and how it relates to actual business models. And it just so happens this morning we actually met with an auto manufacturer that's a new one out of the state of Utah. There's now 2 of them that I'm aware of. And actually talking with them about the potential of tying decentralized systems. So you actually get a vehicle and this is an electric vehicle, that actually has a life cycle that's much longer than the 100 or 150,000 miles that currently is happening in the world, with the electric vehicles way up to 500,000 miles and extending the actual financing and life cycle and decreasing the price. I won't go through all the details because that's going to be for another day, but it's super exciting stuff. But what's happening here is we're actually issuing credit that is backed by the system. I'll show you the model real fast if I can. Let's see if I can. Oh, well, there we go. So the model looks something similar to this. And this is just for illustration here. This is not a public thing that we'll go live with. But you have fiat currencies, whether it's payroll or some other asset that flows in to a payment system, kind of like what we're currently using with wires, ACH, payments, could be a Visa, MasterCard, Discover. So they actually pay to buy precious metals, namely silver and gold, that then can actually have a receipt that is issued as a digital receipt that then can also purchase or tie into digital assets that are notarized, titled, insured, that then ties to the credit system. Now, the credit system, some of the stuff we're looking at first is autos and then homes. And then imagine just a simple card that you can basically get that ties to it. So imagine a card. For those that have not actually used cards historically, we've been running different ones. This is one that we've had out for about 5 years now. And it operates in 7 different countries, even though we have team members in about 13 different countries. But it works the same way in principle, where there's a digital asset that's transferred that then loads up a cash balance that's there. And what you can do is you can actually take the value of silver and gold and also use that as an asset. So imagine silver and gold that's appreciating in value versus depreciating on the currencies that are out there. So this is a way for people to be able to preserve some of their financial strength that they currently have before it's gone, when really what's happening is think about this last week. So we have this carbon credit system, and the World Economic Forum, when I went there, I actually personally met with John Kerry. I wonder if that's even up. I shouldn't even pull it up, because I basically told him I don't believe that global warming is an issue like you're talking about, and I don't believe that energy is this massive concern. As a matter of fact, there are technologies that will bring us sustainable energy that's already here. It's all around us. We don't even create it. We just have to organize it and use it. And we don't do that with wires and all this the stuff that we're currently doing, where literally we're burning fossil fuels, which they're really not even fossil fuels. They just teach you that they're fossil fuels, but they're really not from dinosaur bones, which is a whole nother conversation. But we're basically burning diesel fuel, or we're pulling it in from sun, which is a wonderful way to do it. But the point that I'm trying to drive at is how it all comes together, and how assets are tied to an individual, and how technology can actually enable these assets to actually tie. One of the things that's going to be associated with this is actually a bank that has a charter that is focused on accredited investors primarily. So it's a very different focus that's tied to it. And we look forward to working with different indigenous communities that tie to some of these environments, and finally wrapping up some models with lots of folks that we've talked about over the years and making these things become a reality. So this is one of the advancements. One of the other things that ties to this is actually working with these different countries, namely, like earlier today, we actually had some folks on with some advancements within the Ethiopian country around their back-end systems and their front-end systems, and then a possible phone, which we'll talk about in future conversations when it's appropriate, as well as the Mexican environment and some of the systems that are there as well. And we hope to continue to provide updates. Today's not a good day for that. And other environments. So one of the big things is we're 7 days away from the voting systems within America, and these types of voting systems that you can actually vote from an autonomous standpoint, and actually have them count just through a simple QR code. Let's see here. So this is not checking location. So this particular technology actually looks at where the browser is located and then where I'm located, and then validates that I can actually vote for it. It's pretty slick. But this is how voting could actually happen in the future from a cryptographic standpoint, and remove the fraudulent sides of it. So back over to some of these advancements, these actual coins, or coins that are similar to them, can actually be issued through a bullion type environment, minted from a mints environment, which we'll talk a little bit about. So these are some of the foils, some of the coins. Some of the coins are already existing, whether they're a South African Cougarand or a Canadian maple leaf, whether they're silver or gold, or what I love personally is the buffalo. So I think there's a lot of history there that doesn't get ignored when that type of thing happens. And then the actual checkout process and the conversion process on how they actually get converted over. So working through the details that's associated with that, and there's a lot of them, but that's primarily a lot of the things that we focused on this last week. Other topics that are important. We did have a key meeting with the Hawaiian Kingdom this last week and some of their councils. There's still no forward movement as it relates to some of the things that we're talking about around the restoration of the Kingdom of Hawaii. But there are amazing things that are happening within these environments. And what's nice is they're actually starting to see it. Some of the other things that have actually surfaced this last week, historically, we actually have worked with some folks in Israel, and they actually just reached back out and said, it's time. And so hopefully next week we'll be able to spend some time on that. We may have a guest from Israel. It's going to be about 2:30 to 3 o'clock in morning time for them. But yeah, so that's basically a quick report out from this last week. Any thoughts, comments, feedback, or areas that you'd like to dig into from anyone in the live audience?
Yeah, Michael, I heard, I saw an article that, I don't remember which department, I'll tell you right now. I actually put it, okay, it's breaking, major national cybersecurity exercise on election day. Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, I think a lot of that's just to create a lot of noise to mask some of the data sets that are going to go on. Just like what you're seeing with the fires, with the voting polls. Once they stick their votes in, the people are starting them on fire. I mean, it's just
Noise?
Noise. Yeah.
Okay.
But what I mean by that is the cyber attack that you're talking about is what they're doing is actually planning, or they call them good versus bad, or white versus blue, or they give them different colors. and they try and penetrate to another site. So it's friendly type stuff, but through the traffic and through the noise, I believe they'll create a smoke shield, so to speak, to mask some of the things that are going to go on during that period. I think we're going to have 48 hours of just craziness, and then we'll see what happens on the other side of it. Because people think it's just a voting day and it's going to happen on the 5th. Usually America wakes up the following morning and everything's, decided, but I don't think that's going to be the case. It's interesting to also see what they're doing in DC to kind of prepare for things, but yeah. So
Yeah, that's what I've been hearing too. Apparently, like 12 Black Hawk helicopters getting people out, and I don't know. I mean, it's so hard to know what's true and what's not anymore.
yeah. Any other thoughts, comments?
Hey, Michael, I have a question about what you just showed us. A little while you showed us how the Hawaiian dollar will have the Hawaiian life card to it. How is that still happening, or how is that going to tie into what you just showed us with the card? Like, will there just be one card for like the different life apps, or how is that going to tie into what you just showed us?
So the goal is to actually roll out an app for each country that has their own currency. And then, by the way, this is a really good question. And then they have their own ability to have their own cards. So there'll be different banks that have their own charters that'll focus on decentralization as a legislative approval charter within each jurisdiction, whether it's a state or a country or a kingdom. So each one would actually have their own currency. So imagine like a Hawaiian dollar that's actually silver or gold and a foil or a coin, which they already have the coins. There may be a buyback program for some of the old ones. So they would actually have these different physical assets that then tie to a digital asset that then ties to a card. So they're going to have all three for each jurisdiction, and then they'll be cross-jurisdiction based. And that's what the Pacific, when we look at this environment, that's what this Pacific Union's all about, is the ability for different countries to come together and then say, hey, we'll actually use the same type of identification process for people. And you know what? We don't have to profile everyone, but they can still travel. We know, and they paid for it. They validated when they did that. They paid for it when they purchased it. And if we have to validate them, there's just a 2-step process at the check-in where their passport and others. That's another really big thing that I didn't get into. I'll go ahead and share this screen again because this is a part of something that, but that's your question is just spot on. It's really logical because it's like, how does this actually get rolled out? And that's why we hold these calls, is to be able to walk through the logic associated with it. So when we look at some of these countries are like, well, we need to update some of our systems, whether they're identity systems or passport systems, but they need to be able to be equal in current physical security that the current systems are, and then also in the future of digital security. For instance, the real IDs inside of the United States of America that are actually from a company that sells hardware that accesses it, as well as the database systems, they use encryption keys for the identity. The problem is they're centrally controlled, which means that they can literally have transparency into everything. And if you have a physical asset that is only tied to one individual and can only be issued from one organization, then that is a form of the slavery and control. And that's really what we're trying to provide the alternative for. So what you're seeing is a service that will actually help enable, and we don't know who's going to do this yet, but we do know that there's requirements for it. There's a request for proposal and a request for information for it. And then looking at pricing, where a machine like this would actually pop out decentralized IDs that don't have full names on them. And these aren't just IDs, they're also passports. And the passports would then tie into this process. The process is not perfected, the systems are not perfected, but that's the direction that everyone's going in, if that makes sense. Oop. That's not good. Let's see if I can get back in.
Thank Michael.
Sorry, push the wrong button.
He's back.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Anyways, so yeah, so that being said.
Welcome back, Michael. We cannot hear you.
Thanks, Mr. Green. So that being said, combining, each country has its own life app. So it has an app in different marketplaces. It has its own currency that is actually tied to silver and gold. And then it has its own card that connects to the fiat systems that are currently there. Now, that could be a taxable event when you convert from digital to fiat. So if you go from a physical asset like gold that then has a digital receipt that then gets converted into cash on a card, that could be a taxable event. Okay. So, but if vendors would actually take it without taking Visa, then everybody basically can do real-time payments with no fees, no government, no bank, no control, no centralization, no slavery. So that's really where it's going. Make sense?
Yeah, so let me just clarify so I get my question right. So say if I live in Hawaii and I want to download the Hawaiian Life app, do I need to get the Hawaiian Life card? And then do I need to sign up to get the other card that you just showed us?
No.
So then we can cross
Just one of the cards. And so,
one.
yeah,
Okay.
the goal would be to actually have bank charters within each jurisdiction that authorizes the banks to even issue these. So
Okay.
imagine if a bank would issue, because the banks can choose if they're going to use MasterCard, American Express, Visa, Discover. Imagine a system that actually gives them more basis points and can transfer fees in real time. They're going to move
Okay.
to it. Many in the world would argue with that and say they're not going to adopt this because they care about two things that enable the control. Anti-money laundering, which is a process that they implement, and I totally agree with it, as long as honesty can have obfuscation, where obfuscation is recognized as a security measure. So what that means is, why can't somebody say, I'm going to rent a room from a hotel for 3 days? And usually you do two things. You give them a form of ID and a payment. But if Marriott says, we'll accept a decentralized ID and a decentralized payment because we understand that we're actually getting better verification of who you are. Why? Because we actually got hacked and we held the liability, and GDRP from the European Union actually sued us for hundreds of millions of dollars through Starwoods for collecting data in an inappropriate way. So you know what? Keep your data, just make sure you pay us, and you can stay in our room and everybody's happy. And it not only that, but I believe that the vendors that come onto this, that's the counterbalance to what's happening with the $41 billion that was just lost by the World Bank and UN and whoever is involved in that. It'd be nice if someone looked that up. But there was a massive amounts of basically carbon credit money around climate control, which is actually the centralized system that's trying to do all this to actually facilitate that control. So the goal is to have only one card that you need to get. You don't need to get multiple cards. And, you know, they'll work with the existing vendors that are already on Visa, MasterCard rails, not American Express. There may be Discover stuff. But what you're seeing is, you know, the carbon credit already connecting in with these different Visa companies or MasterCard companies. The one that I just showed you that you didn't hear was actually MasterCard. So it was an announcement with MasterCard and the carbon credit stuff. So.
Okay, so when I was in Hawaii, I did do lots of fruit shopping, and I went to the local markets, and literally, like, people are already using touch pay technology at our local fruit markets. And I don't know why people can't see how the innovation that people can have for their local communities there, because we're already doing it now.
You know, that's a really good example, because if Hawaii was actually where this guy Raghu had actually come up with the model, and that's actually where he also got enough votes to become president and all this crazy stuff. And he wasn't doing it to become president. He was doing it to control the actual lawmakers that were creating legislation to control taxation, to say, you know, out of the X percent of tax that you're getting on property or use or whatever, sales tax, put a percentage of it to actually fund the farmers to grow local product, to actually have the markets be sold the local product. And then the goal was to have it sold in a local Hawaiian dollar currency. And then what it does is that this was actually all done in Hawaii at the markets. And so I personally took my phones as well. I haven't talked to a lot of people about it. And some people were like, I wouldn't take the Hawaiian dollar because I don't know who you are. You're a white man telling me about this dollar. What does this mean? I even have one guy he was just selling coconuts. And he was like, all I take is cash. I was like, well, I really do like coconuts. And so I was like, okay, well, can I pay you in this? And he's like, no, I just take cash. Can I pay you in Visa? No, I just take cash, which is refreshing because a lot of people are saying, I don't take cash anymore. And so basically this guy, the next week when I came through, he was like, I thought about this and I don't want anything to do with it. I want to just fight against it. And he literally yelling at me with the machete in his hand saying, I'm not even going to serve you because I don't want anything. It's like, I'll just use Visa again if that's what you want. It's like, no, I don't want to. It's very mean. The next week I came to him and he was so kind. He literally just apologized and he said, I don't know why I was so mean, but I'm sorry. And I'll give you a coconut for free. I came with cash that time. And I was like, no, I'll pay for it. But the point being is a lot of people are not going to want this type of solution. They're very afraid of it. They're like, I don't want to be anything digital. I want my freedom. I was trying to explain to him, no, this actually gives you your freedom. Even though it's digital, nobody knows who the people are that are doing it, but you get paid. And then the next question is going to be prove to them that they can get paid. And that's why this gold and silver thing is so important, because if a digital asset is backed by a physical asset like gold and silver that's looked at as a worldwide standard, then all of the arguments that people have around being concerned that says, crypto anything, crypto being cryptography, which is short for crypto, isn't backed by anything. People think that in their heads. And so when we actually talk about this credit system that is basically saying you can actually get credit for a vehicle, like Mr. Green talked about, this is one of the concepts that we came right out of the Mexican embassy in Texas for a ton of the folks that are actually, they don't have an identity now. They're starting over. So they're perfect candidates to say, hey, are you telling me I can buy a car? Are you telling me, so I have to follow this process? And I think there's a lot that we have to do to be able to make that become a reality. But this is one of the first steps around selling physical assets such as gold and silver that has a digital receipt that can be issued credit behind it. One of the other big things is one of the goals over the next 35 to 45 days is to actually get someone in the financial industry that's no longer there to actually understand this and see it, and then back in fiat dollars the ability to purchase, because we got to buy like 200 to 400 used Teslas or Rivians or other electric vehicles, and there's a reason why, that basically are on the other side of this, that then is the actual asset that they will get to be able to do it. So I hope that makes sense. It's a viable answer to a really wise question. So welcome, Susan. Any other thoughts or comments?
I put the link to the Oxfam audit for the 41 billion.
Will you drop it? We drop it in there again, because I actually was logged out and didn't see
Sure.
it.
Sure.
Okay, so when can I get this card? When can I sign up to?
The card's going to come after the silver and gold, which then can tie to a digital asset.
Okay.
So it's all kind of it's going to be in a process. But this is where this is where we want to announce it and go forward with it. Yeah. So this is actually what I was talking about. So it's like $41 billion in a World Bank climate finance unaccounted for. How does this, I don't understand how this can actually become a reality for humanity. Anybody have any thoughts or feedback on this piece of news?
I mean, for me, I knew literally nothing about tax, anything, and I dedicated myself to finding the best people that learn about tax in Australia. And I've just read like a whole bunch of books about tax and the systems from one of the best tax accountants. He was like Kerry Packer's tax accountant. He was one of like the biggest media moguls here in Australia, and he gives so much good advice on his experience as a tax agent for Kerry Packer. And he spoke about the system and how, you know, there's all these loopholes, but it's really, really messy. And there's like 112 pages of tax legislation that doesn't even make sense to even tax agents. And it just seemed very, very messy. And there was lots of money missing from mistakes, like human errors. And I guess that's why I like, you know, blockchain and the idea of it. But I love everything about what you said about the digital backing, the gold and the, you know, the money. I think that this is a good solution, one of the best ones that we could probably see. Yeah.
I mean, think about it. If this actually followed the same process that we're talking about, what they would do when the money's actually issued, and people need to understand how money gets issued. Money is actually, majority of money is issued when people borrow it. So it's put into the account when they actually get the loan. And when it's put into the account, it's created out of nothing. So if you can get your head around that, when the process of money creation actually occurs, there has to be an account. And what I mean by that is an accounting for it. So they actually purchase an asset like what we're showing you here with these silver and gold. Like they literally, let's say they actually purchase coins, okay? And those coins actually have a serial number that links to an encryption key that ties to the digital asset. And so if they did that, if this World Bank environment actually did that, but I don't even know where. So if those funds were issued here, you would be able to see how the funds actually get spent. Now, people would say, hey, but what if vendors don't take it? Now think about it. If you go to a vendor and say, you don't have to pay your Visa fees and you can actually get paid on time, and people will actually come to you to shop because they actually want their freedom. I don't know about you, but I think that there's going to be little to next to no friction to that. And people can actually keep their privacy, but they can buy things from you. And if they want a credit, you can actually track what they got back. And if they abuse it, if they continue to do it, you know, you can even pay your vendors with it. I mean, and I believe there's a future where you don't even have to file returns. Everything can be transparent and honest, and it can be private. So this is not just a theory, this is reality. And in my opinion, the folks that actually figure this out and implement it will be heroes. And I don't know, to be honest with you, there's so much noise out there. I don't know if it's going to be from the digital world. I don't know if the work that we're doing is going to be what will actually do it. Even if we just help to steer people and say, hey, technology can actually solve all of these issues. So we talk about America that has all of these funds and value and assets, so to speak. We're talking about a whole new financial system is what we just talked about. A voting system, health, identity, create businesses and assets, exchange commodities, equities, and currencies, you know, a dispute system that's online. I just went through a call earlier today from a guy that stole almost $5 million worth of assets. You could argue it was like 3.8 million, blah, blah, blah. But what he did was so wrong. And it was one of the first times that I ever wanted to go after someone and threaten them. And he did such a great job hiring this attorney. And the attorney, basically, we went through mediation. The following morning they served. It was just, he was so good. Put it this way. I'm in negotiations with this guy, this attorney today. And I said to him, we will only settle if we get clearance to work with you in the future. Now think about that. That's because of a legal system. You need to be able to navigate through the mess and the nightmare that is currently very inefficient. I mean, you basically have a whole nother language that you have to learn. You've got a whole bunch of money that you have to actually pay out. And it's really the people with the most money that actually win. So we weren't willing to say, you know what, we're going to continue to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on this. We're done. We'll go ahead. So my point is to have a dispute system that is actually fair and balanced and can use technology like AI. I'm telling you, the future systems around dispute, not only are you going to see things using online systems like how we're connecting with our live audience, but you're going to see things that will actually resolve issues. So people say, this is my problem, this is my claim. And the next thing you know, a system pops out. Well, have you thought about this? Have you done this? Could you work together this way? Okay, you're right. These are real problems. Let's get it into a jury. And then think about juries. Juries could be thousands and tens of thousands or millions of people real time. I mean, I saw an article yesterday, I won't even tell you what it was, that was like not even 24 hours old and had 31 million views on it. And it had comments into the hundreds of thousands within one day. And it's that type of transparency, but the point is you need to have privacy on the other side of it for this to actually work. And to do that, you have to have identity systems that will truly be the future. And some people are like, you know, I don't see how you can actually have a name, first name, without a last. I'm gonna pull up one that actually shows maybe some photos. So how can you actually have a first name with no last names and have it valid? When people start seeing, you know, you scan this to actually validate this and then you're into it, you know, it'll start making a lot more sense. For instance, with the company that we met with today, that's an auto manufacturer here in Utah that's around electric vehicles, you know, it was eye-opening to think, well, yeah, if you actually combined privacy, so the data that's coming off these cars, instead of actually trying to sell it, if we actually let the individual own it, would they actually buy a car because it was private and free? You know, that's just another competitive advantage or barrier to entry of the others. And it's something that would actually, I think, lead and guide future manufacturers to do what's right around privacy. So, oh, I wasn't even sharing a screen, so you guys didn't even see all the stuff. Anyways, the online listeners saw it, so I'm so sorry, online. Anybody have any other thoughts or questions or feedback?
So that means that it's going to be much easier to write policy, correct?
One would hope. As a matter of fact, if we jump back into, I'm going to share screen real fast. I'm so sorry. This tech is, I haven't been used to it. I really don't like it, but it is what it is.
Because these are some really large issues that we have solutions for that kind of need to be implemented. And I do believe that they will be with the new frameworks, but it's like, how does the policy work for people to understand it between our environments? Like,
yeah, that's a really good. So this is an example of executive orders that would actually authorize decentralized identity, finance, voting, assets, the coinage with the back, you know, cross-border transactions, all the treasury sides of it, the ability to transact, you know, just like what they've done with executive orders to basically enslave people, this will actually free people. And so,
okay, so let's just say we did an executive order and we submitted it. Where does it go and who does it go to?
Well, that's this particular system. If you remember right, on this forum in this Digital World Town Hall meeting, we actually donated this whole system to a particular family.
Oh,
And,
yes. Okay.
yeah. So if you actually look at, if you spell out the sequence of question marks here,
Okay.
it actually goes to a particular name, but we're about a week away from being able to define that. So, you know, in all reality, it's a very interesting process. Why? Because we have to be very patient. And for me personally, that's not a quality that I personally have. And so we have to actually figure out who's going to be selected. And I'll use that word specifically. Instead of elected, I believe it's going to be who's selected and is allowed to be selected. But then once that actually happens, this is kind of the reality that I personally see. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing here. So if you can see this is basically a workflow that goes through. I don't know why it's, so who is actually elected? And what's sad is there's like 5 or 6 candidates in different, depending on what region you're in, of people that are actually running for president. And there's some really good, amazing, competent people. As a matter of fact, there's a, Cleon Skousen was an individual that I read a lot of his stuff and massively respected. And his son, Joel, or his grandson, Joel Skousen, who is actually here from Utah, and he's a city away from where I currently am, but wonderful man, written amazing books. One of the books was Strategic Relocation. And I actually reached out to him primarily because I'd had prior history with him, because we did security, managed services around security, and he was one of the customers, and he had some high profile people, and we would basically help secure their lives. And make a long story short, I went and met with him before I actually settled in some environments with farming and other things, and asked him, is this the right place? From a population density, from a food supply, from a supply chain, from a criminal, from a natural disaster, from nuclear fallout. He's running for president. I mean, and the only way I found out was reading the ballot. It's just mind-blowing to me. And so you find all these different, and then, I don't know if you saw this, but Satan is running. Some of most of the people on this call are not even from, America. We got Ethiopia, Mexico, Canada, Australia, all on this call. And there's not even a lot, but when you actually look at the voting process and what this is actually going to step us through, depending on how this actually pans out, we're really tied to how some of these systems will be deployed in America. So I'll stop blabbing there, but hopefully that makes sense. So next question, thought, feedback, comment. If we don't have one, we'll wrap up. There's a lot to always do. So it's been a good call so far. Grateful for all those that attend. Mr. Green.
Hello, everybody. Good night. So I want to just share something very, very quick. Just a small idea, thought that I had. So, for example, each time that someone puts some money into this credit union, this digital credit union, it also will represent like a small percentage of this institution, of this new entity, because as far as I understand the concept of and the idea is like to create a legal entity and a company, right? Like a cooperative.
Yeah. So it'll actually be a decentralized business that will actually be a co-op type business that will actually be a type of credit union with a charter. And the charter is going to be focused around accredited investors that provide liquidity that actually have ownership. So like a dividend. So you're exactly right. So the bank or credit union itself is not going to actually make money. It's going to be paid out to all the members. That's the goal. Yeah.
Because each time that some member like put some money into the accounts, like into this entity, the value of the entity will rise up because you're also part of ownership, part of the entity itself. But my question is very precise. Like, it will be only completely digital, or it will be also the legal entity, like for example, within like United States, like a company, like an LLC, Inc., a co-op, or only like into the digital.
It'll actually have multiple different companies within different regions. So maybe a physical one within the Americas, and maybe multiple states, also in other countries. So it's an international type credit union. And so there's actually going to be multiple different jurisdictions. there are associations that are internationally banked that for credit unions, but they're an association for credit unions that is international. But to create a multi-domiciled with legal businesses that have like a registered agent in a different, no, you actually have to have separate corporations in each country that have their own reporting. And so some of those tie to the Pacific in a very big way, and the governance systems within the Pacific Union, as well as the different jurisdictions. And that's why we're starting some of them within digital world law, so to speak, friendly environments. America is not necessarily one of those, but there are wonderful processes that we can go through, and we have to go through them. And then we'll have to go through the third-party auditing side of it. So when people buy silver and gold, it's verified that it's there. It's verified that it's vaulted. It's verified that it's insured. And then if people want to cash it out, they can say, hey, I'll cash it out and give me my gold and I'll carry it myself. Or you want to take it in a different currency. You want to say, I want to come from a digital receipt back into US dollars or renminbi or mark or pounds or yen or whatever, or pesos, you can do that.
Mhm.
So I can see a future where, ATMs, you can literally do it on the fly. So you convert gold digitally to a credit on a credit card that can be plugged into an ATM and pull out the local currency of whatever denomination you're in. Does that answer your question or make sense?
Yeah, totally. Because also those entities can also buy other assets in order to like back it up all the currency within themselves, right? Like for example, land and other type of.
Yeah, that would tie to the asset side of it. I'll go ahead and pull that open. You guys aren't seeing this, so
In that sense, because people be like double back it up the digital currencies, right?
yeah, that ties to this view right here.
Okay. Right now you are not sharing.
You'll see it in a second.
Okay, wonderful.
So that's going to tie to this chart right here. So again, you kind of have, it starts here with fiat currencies that come in and buy precious metals that are physical. And then it crosses a line to bind physical serialized assets with digital assets with a cryptographic key. So the key and the serial number are linked in an auditing process. And then you can have notaries, titled, insurance, all behind it. And then there's other assets. So it's not just, a digital currency. You could actually say, you know what? I'm going to have a commodity. I'm going to have mangoes or corn or papayas. And people actually want to own assets within a particular class, which they're already doing with commodities, equities, and currencies within these exchange. But people can actually go into them real time. And that's the biggest thing that we saw with BRICS this last week. In my opinion, the thing that happened with BRICS in Russia was really a combination of a bunch of countries coming together. There was no massive technology advancement. What they announced is actually called BRICS Clear. I don't know if you saw that, but I'll actually pull it up real fast. And for those that are not, let's see. Let's see if I can access this one okay. Yeah, so they basically came out with this new process. I'll read this to you real fast.
Expressing concerns over unilateral coercive sanctions that have disruptive effects on the world economy, the BRICS members agreed to examine the establishment of an independent cross-border settlement and depository infrastructure. BRICS Clear. So
that BRICS Clear, which is an interesting term for multiple reasons. I won't go through here. I'll kind of, this is a better description of it.
BRICS Clear, the international payment and deposit platform to ensure increased circulation of national currencies. The Russian Financial Ministry, Central Bank and consulting firm Yakov and Partners earlier in October issued a document proposing BRICS Clear as a platform that would utilize national depository systems independent of third-party influence. BRICS Clear, the international payment and deposit platform to ensure increased circulation of national currencies, was proposed by Russia ahead of the summit.
So that advancement that you're seeing there was not necessarily a technological advancement other than people saying, we're actually going to go and share, different assets. Most of the world is still operating within US dollars, which is a different conversation. So somebody just sent this to me. What would you like to see here, Daniela?
Nothing, I was just putting some articles in there about what happened with BRICS.
Okay.
Michael, can you put your that link in the chat that you just got us, if you can, please?
Yeah, no problem.
Do you think, I have a question about BRICS. Do you think people are joining BRICS because they're searching for safety? Like countries want safety?
Countries want trade. And what's happened historically is the United States of America has taken over the currency systems and money system and then limited, and this is why developing countries are always under the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund's thumb, is because they just limit who can actually buy and sell the different currencies in these developing countries. You might have a country that is very rich in a certain asset and very undervalued, but they're limited on who can actually buy and sell. And so when you open up a free system like this, where fair market value is true fair market value, and then when you talk about backing it with actually silver or gold that's tied to a digital receipt, what you end up talking about is a system that's flat. One of the other things that was threatened this last week, and I don't know any validity to it, is a similar system that was flat, which is in stable coins, one of the original mother stable coins, Tether. Tether was targeted from an auditing standpoint. I don't want to create rumors. I don't know what the value is. People could probably look it up. But this last week, there were some interesting things that are going on with that. I can see public relations firms like USDC and the money behind USDC, which is like over $100 million, probably even more than that, from BlackRock and others. You guys can search it and validate it. But basically, you're seeing stable coins that really don't have a backing to them. For instance, and it's really simple, the buying power, if you had value over here, so value and time, the buying power is going to go down over time of any dollar in currency. Why? Because they are not backed by real world assets that are actually fair market valued and looked at globally, like gold and silver. People can say, well, China's done this with their currency and the renminbi is backed by this and this, but it's not 100%. So what I'm trying to say is all the currencies that are out there in the world, you don't know how many there are. You don't know what the quantity is that's actually issued. I'll pull up in a chart for our listeners online. It's basically the chart that we talked, well, I'll just share it here as well. I'm looking forward to using different tech. So this chart here is basically everything I'm talking about. You have countries that have currencies that are created, but do you believe that these numbers are accurate? So this data is about 6 years old, maybe 5 years old, but I don't believe that we as humans really understand how much money is created within each one of the currencies. I probably trust the Japanese environment. Why? Because they've gone through such honesty and scrutiny that their currency has been hit so hard. But the point being is the value is directly tied to the quantity. And so as the quantity is unknown, the value will continue to go down. So for instance, the $41 billion that wasn't accounted for within this fund that just disappeared, where did that money come from and was it really created? And that's why this slide is so important, because what happens when we have war or famine or catastrophes, there's project finance. You saw this when there were massive earthquakes in Haiti, where, if you remember, the Clintons got involved in the project finance, and you basically had different organizations that go and connect together through contract and create money. They create money through the International Monetary Fund that ties to the World Bank, that ties to the reserve the Federal Reserve within the United States of America, which is actually not a part of the Treasury. They're separate entities. And so when you really understand what's going on behind the scenes, those numbers in dollars are not totally transparent. That's why this stuff can just move around like it does. But in the cryptography world, when you actually tie it to a decentralized system, for instance, I can ask on this call, how many Bitcoins will be created? And I know that there's people on this call that will actually know the answer. Can anybody?
21 million.
That's right, 21 million. So if there's a quantified amount that's only going to be created and available, that tells you that over time, the value of it will eventually go up if there's a demand for it. And especially if people had to sacrifice something, like they had to buy a node or a miner, they had to pay a power bill, and then they actually got a mathematical question right or a cryptographic key right, and then they basically got one. So they put something in, paid a power bill and got a node, and then they got something out. And so their desire to say, I'm going to hang on to it, goes up. They've got skin in the game, so to speak. And so when you actually have a system that truly has that value exchange, it's going to actually, I'll drop off of this and try and, let's go back over here. It's actually going to go up. Remember that time and the value? So instead of going down, it's actually going to go up. It'll inflate. And that's the same thing. Like if you go and look at the value, I've actually got a couple data points on this. I wrote them down on gold and such. Gold or silver over time. It was very interesting. Oh, I'm in the wrong part of it. Anyways, other questions, thoughts, comments, feedback?
So if I don't have, let's say I don't have a credit union in my jurisdiction, will I be able to participate and purchase the gold and silver and get a certificate and all of, and then use it? You're saying credit card? Is it a credit card or is it debit card? The credits get transferred.
It's actually a debit card, so you just get the cash advance side of it, if that makes sense.
Right.
So
Yes, of course.
yeah. So it's not a credit card. It comes through the right form of credit, which is you actually, and that's where banking and finance is owned with these debits and credits. But if you really don't own an asset, then you really don't have the credit. So we're actually going to build out that term credit. But when you use the card network, Visa, MasterCard, it's actually going to be in the form of a debit card. So.
Okay, I'm trying to understand this. So is it going to be using Visa or MasterCard rails? So
if you want to, you can, but if the vendors say we will accept Hawaiian dollar, like Becca was talking about, if you go and they accept Hawaiian dollar, they could get paid in real time. There's no fees, and it's all done, and it's done outside of converting it to the Visa network and to US dollars or whatever currency that you're in. Like you don't have to touch US dollars to actually hit the Visa network. Becca can be down in Australia, you can be in Canada, and you're using Canadian dollars and you're off ramping off of Visa or MasterCard, and you don't even touch US dollars. And so do you touch the taxation jurisdiction within America if you do that? No, you stay in the jurisdiction of tax that is in your region. And so to the point, you sent an amazing, if you could send that article that you sent me earlier this week around Newfoundland? Yeah, Newfoundland. I thought that was, I mean, that's something that everyone should really be aware of. It was amazing. So what Danielle is going to send is a link to a document that talks about how people are governing themselves in unincorporated regions. So this is north of Prince Edward Island, up in the Canadian area. And they talk about how they work together with like co-ops for power or energy or for trash service or for roads. And it's just amazing to see how they're actually doing it. Thank you, Danielle. I actually sent it over to, this is going to ask me for a thing on this system. I haven't.
I just love what they're doing because they're all working together. It's just amazing for every need that they have, the community comes together. I think it's fantastic. It's pretty much everything you've been talking about,
Yeah.
Michael.
I wish I could see it. Thank you.
The whole system.
Yeah. So for those that can see, I haven't subscribed to this, but yeah, I'll just do this.
Oh, you can't get in because you're not.
Yeah, I paid for it a long time. Actually, it shows me logged in. I don't know why. Yeah, so it's got me in there. Maybe I can see it now. No. So basically, it's really a gorgeous article.
Do you want me to pull it up on
Yeah,
my
if you
screen?
wanna- yeah, go ahead and share it, please. So it's just interesting how people can actually come together and be free. And the cost of living, like they were talking about trash services, $100 a year. And they come 52 weeks out of the year. What a concept, you know, and power is not that crazy expensive. There you go. Thank you so much. So any comments on this, Danielle?
You know what? It just shows me what's possible and how kind of out of touch we've gotten about community and community living. Listen, Michael, I remember when I was a little girl, the mothers didn't work, and every mother on my street knew every child. And if one of the mothers had to do something, all the other mothers looked after the kids. It was community. And if anybody needed anything, it was community. And we weren't in a little tiny village. I mean, we were in a town, but this shows me what's possible. It shows me exactly what it speaks exactly to what I've been wanting to do since 1980. I had this whole idea in my mind that I wanted to buy a big piece of land and everybody would have their own space, but then we would have community living, and it's exactly what I want to do, and they're doing it and they're successful. And I bet you, at the end of the day, I know it's a very small town, but at the end of the day, I bet you they have more left over in their pockets, and they're not enslaved. They're just not.
I wonder
They're working-
what their families look like. That would be interesting to run a study to see how happy they are, how connected they are, what kind of potential crime there is. It'd be really interesting to try and understand that. So,
Yeah, it would.
Well, any other topics or thoughts that anyone wants to bring up? If not, we'll go ahead and wrap up. Anybody want to say a prayer before we do, or we just wrap up? Thoughts, comments? No force? Okay. Much love, everybody. We will talk to you later. The last time I had one of these meetings, I said the prayer and it was just, it wasn't like, yeah. So we will see you next week, same time. We'll say our own prayers. Much love. Pray for America this next week. So actually,
I'm praying for America.
I guess the 5th is the 5th going to be Tuesday. So we're actually going to have our Digital World Town Hall meeting on Election Day. Is that right?
Correct.
Is your time zone changing soon?
I don't know. Can somebody?
The time zone usually changes like the first Sunday, I think, in November. So
Okay, so that means next week, Michael, this meeting's will be different for
That-
people in different time zones.
That's
Just
why
for
I-
everyone.
That's why I sent out a calendar event so that it changes for everybody. And then I'll also send out a quick update before and just kind of give you another little hint. So, but Susan, do you have anything you want to review or anything's going on in your world? I know you're deep in the election side of it as well.
not at this point. I think I'll go back and re-listen. I got busy with something else, so I didn't join right away. So I'll just go on to X and see if I can see anything interesting. And if I have any questions, I'll let you know.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you
Thanks.
for all you do. Much love. Kia ora.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.